A few months ago, I read about React-PHP and not React.js, and using that with PHP-PM, we could improve the speed of the Drupal websites. So my title was how to make your website 1,000 more faster. I don't think it's ready yet to be 1,000 times faster, but it's a very interesting proposition on how to improve the speed, especially regarding blocking IOs. And so I've made I spent the last 4 days looking at that, and that's my first presentation in front of people, so I'm a little bit nervous, but it's going to be a long career doing presentations, I hope. So what is React-PHP? React-PHP is the ancestor of React.js. I think most people, how many of you know React.js? A little bit more than half. And all the principles in React.js, or most of the principles in React.js, were derived from React-PHP. So there's some very interesting tools present in React-PHP. So there are event loops. So instead of waiting for the I/O, you have loops, and you declare everything on. You want to have this event, this event, this event, doing this, and that, and after you start the loop, and it will all react. That's the name to the events. There's also a streams abstraction. Welcome, everybody. The streams abstraction lets you have big chunks of data, either coming in or coming out, being asynchronous. So you don't have to wait for the whole data to come in. You can process it as it goes, or decide to process it only when it's done. You have all the triggers to do that. You have everything to be able to receive and to ask for HTTP connections. So that's another great utility for our application. And it can interact with processes. It's using the application classes that have been done by Symfony. So what are blocking IOs? IOs are very much slower than CPU operations. Normal process involves a mix-up of I/O and CPU, so when a process starts an I/O, either reading or writing, it must wait until it's done, and it's, I don't know, what, 1,000 times slower to wait for I/O than do CPU. CPU process is really, really fast. So you lose time in that process, thus the expression blocking I/O. So if you could use that waiting time to do something else, that would help you doing your thing. In our case, it's a Drupal website, so we'll see after how it's been done by PHP-PM. So how to fix the blocking I/O with React-PHP? We will use event loops, so in streams and other tools in order to avoid blocking I/O. For the loops, we register applications, and they will respond to the events that happen. Calm down, Alain. So we organize our code in order to do tasks while waiting in I/O. So you make sure that your process is not blocked on I/O. So you designed the whole thing, and we will see later with PHP-PM. It's doing a good job, but it still has a problem with I/O. Streams will us do I/O with big chunks in an asynchronous manner. So that's an example of really a simple loop. There's a loop here. So So we declare an application. The application is waiting. It will be triggered when an event, request event happen through a socket and an HTTP. So here is the HTTP part of the library. So you got a server waiting on the port 1337 on the local host. So when something happens, a request on port 1337 happens, this guy will be triggered and will answer. It will use response. Where is the response? Yes, already. It will send back hello world on a sample page. And something interesting, because this process is PHP process and it will stay there all of the time. So all the requests that happen, it's the same code. It's not triggered or started every time a request arrive. Like usually you have with Apache. Apache will start a new process usually, and then you cannot have variables that stays there. Here you have an example. You have an I variable, and you can increment the variable and even put it in the answer here. So you put a request and you say, you will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You will count the number of requests and put it in the page. So this is something new with this approach, and it could be used for many features. One of the main features we want to it's interesting for us is that the Bootstrap for PHP, like compiling the PHP code and initialing variables and stuff like that, is already done. And the Drupal Bootstrap will be done only once, and the PHP process will stay in memory and receive the triggers. So that's about between 300 and 500 milliseconds. That usually happens on every request that we save. But that comes with other problems. There's memory leak problems with PHP that a lot of people are working on right now. There are other problems. I read that there are other problems. I don't know exactly which ones. So you have to reload your boot every 30 seconds or so, and it makes a very good job. This one is an example for streams. You see, so you have a read stream, write stream, and the read stream receives something and writes it to the output, and they all being triggered only when events happen. It's another loop here. So PHP-PM is a process manager, and don't ask me what is a supercharger, I don't know. And a load balancer for modern PHP applications. It's built on the ReactPHP, so it's using all the tools that are in ReactPHP. So it's one of the applications that can be done with ReactPHP. It's doing this PPM. It's very good. It's already used for Symfony. In fact, with Drupal, we use the same HTTP kernel that is like a bridge between PHP-PM and the application like Symfony or Drupal. So it knows how the other application wants its data pre-processed. So you kill the bootstrap of PHP and the framework like Symfony or Drupal or Laravel or WordPress or whatever. You can apply that thing to all of them. So PHP-PM spawns several instances of workers. So the workers already bootstrap their thing and they're ready to receive the request. So in my example, I have 4 workers. Because I have 4 CPU cores, I made a lot of tests with 3 workers, 4, 5, and now I have best results with 4. They say that it's the number of cores plus 10%. I've tried with 5, but I prefer with 4 with the result I have. So here are some resources. I like very much the Sergey Zuk. He explains everything about ReactPHP, a lot more than I did. And I will go to the little demo that I made. So when you test how much reaction, when you benchmark a setup, what you want to measure is the flipping point where it begins to be less interesting, based on the number of concurrent users going to the site. We could say that in average, when you say a user, it's something like 6 connections at the same time, because when you someone goes to a website, asks for an URL, it gets 1 connection at the beginning to get the HTML, and then starts to load the images and CSS and JS and all that stuff. And there's a maximum of 6 usually at the same time. So usually a user will use 6 at the same time, and then the 6 will end, and another round of resources will be asked to the server. So kind of made. So on my computer, I have a setup for a Apache with PHP. I take it for a base. I've put 360 concurrent users. Do you know, guys, AEB? Who have used AEB? Yeah, okay, only once. So AEB is Apache benchmark. It's really simple to use. This is the time of the benchmark. So for 30 seconds, this is the maximum of requests. That's 1 million. Yeah, 1 million. It's not important because I don't want to be maxed out, but I want to be maxed out by the time here. And this is the number of concurrent connections. This is different from the number of concurrent users, because it may be usually like 6 connections at the same time. So let's say for this example, we have 60 users at the same time, and continuously for 30 seconds. So usually one user accepts the page and then reads it, but in this example, he will not read it. He may read it, but there's another user coming in that would fill the gap. So we have 60 users. So I've put here htap, so we know the percentage of CPU used by the processes. So when I start that, you will see the spawning of the PHPs, and we will have results in 30 seconds. I'm starting with. You see all the Apache workers. There's more than the page can show for now. You see the CPU is 100% everywhere. The load average is going to 28.2, 32. It's going a lot higher.
Et tu loads un site Drupal? Tu fais une request sur la homepage?
Ouais. This is a home page. Oh yeah, I didn't show you the website. I can show you the website. Anyway, we have the time. So I have it here. We'll just PHP.logo. So that's the testing application that comes with Drupal 8. It's the Full magazine. So that's the home page. You can look at the So what we're measuring is the time to first byte, TTFB. So the time it takes for the server to send the first byte of the HTML file. We don't measure everything else. The optimization, yeah, you want to measure everything. But in our case, we're looking just at how many concurrent users our website can process on with our setup. So that's the thing we want to measure. So if I do F5 here, it doesn't work.
And your PHP code, where do you put it? Is it a file that you add to Drupal, or it's on the server? Because you showed some code at the beginning. Where do you put that code?
Yeah, now I'm just testing the front page. But I have problems here. It's the first time I see it. The page is showing that. Yeah, I will answer your question after this test, because that's the other test.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So I'm having problems here. Where is my... Yes, no. Oh, it's here. I'm used to a bigger screen. Okay. So the only thing I want to see is the document. Okay. Here we are. So 13 milliseconds. That's the thing we're looking at. So that's Drupal 8 with Apache. The usual thing. I can do another round. I have to move away and back. 13.09 milliseconds. So that's the usual one.
So that's the time to the first byte?
Yeah, time to the first byte. The rest is interesting too, but that's not our focus for now. So that's the application I made. It has the results. So I will show you the application. Okay, it's a vendor. So let me find it. really simple. Because I will show you only the main thing. So it's I installed it with Composer in my Drupal directory. So that's why it's in vendor bin ppm. ppm is PHP-PM. PM is for process manager. Include effects. So I don't know this one and this one, why they are there. Checks for presence of PCNTL. So it's using the application in Symfony. And application in Symfony, you can pass it commands to respond to commands. So there's the start command. I will use the start command to start my application. And once it's started, you can, from another shell, stop, reload, or check the status. Even the config, so I never use the config. So it just adds the commands there to the application. So that's a Symfony application. Give it a name, and then add the commands, and start the command. And that's it. That's the last line of the code here. Okay. And I've made a start. So that's the PPM we just saw. I just say to it start, and then give it the path where I'm running, and then the CGI path. The CGI path is where the PHP is going to be called. I tell it where are the files of the website, and then which bridge to use between PPM and Drupal. HTTP kernel, that's another library, and the Bootstrap name, it's called Drupal. The number of workers, the max requests, after 10,000 requests, it will end the worker and start another one. Because after a number of loops in that Drupal instance, you may want to restart because there may be memory problems, and there are other kind of problems. Now I'm going to start a test with localhost. That's the one. The PPM is started here with 4 workers, and it's going to send a reload before starting it. So reload all your workers, and then do the test with 60 concurrent users, and send the results in a CSV file. And now you see chromes, but if I start, you're going to see the PPM plus the 4 workers. So the PPM is taking 100% of the CPU. That's our bottleneck for now. And those are taking about 25% of the CPU. So if I look at what's next, I think it's in the process manager. Find where it's doing too many IOs or waiting on IOs. Or maybe start more than one PPM. I tried it, but it doesn't help because I have only 4 CPUs, 4 cores.
So just a question if
Yeah.
I may. I mean, the 13 milliseconds, is that the time to first byte regular, or is that supercharged?
That's the regular one.
Okay. And how much are you able to gain in performance?
And that's the one here. Yeah, we're gonna go interpret the results also on the test. Yeah. Okay. Now we have 8 milliseconds. Can try it back. And 14. That's high for this guy. Usually it's a lot less. Yeah, this one. Hello. 10 milliseconds. Usually, depending on my setup, I have 4 milliseconds for the TTFB with EpiPen. Now I have 10. But the test gives a better idea because it crashed. Okay. It's doing a better job because I'm the only one accessing it right now, so that's not what we want to test because having 10 or 15 milliseconds doesn't make any difference. The difference is when you have 60 or 100 concurrent users at the same time that you don't want that to become 1 second or 2 seconds. That's what this table is showing us. 50% of the requests have been answered with 210 milliseconds or less, with 60 concurrent users. And then you go up, and until 99% of the requests have been answered below 343 milliseconds. That's acceptable. And this 100% thing, I've read somewhere that in reality that should happen very rarely. So it's the longest request, 28 seconds. Is there only one in the number that have been done? I don't know. I have often a big, the one I like here is the number of requests per second. So 1120 requests per second. That's very good for 60 users at the same time going to the website and without any breath to take for 30 seconds. For me, it's very good. And I could do a test with a lot less just to show you the differences it makes. So instead of 60 users, let's say we have 5 users at the same time for 30 seconds. So it's reloading because it has sent a reload command. You can see it here, the same thing. Which one is it using? I think it's using the Apache one. No. Okay. Using a lot more CPU than that one. Okay. So we have a lot less here, but that's not the important thing. Is I want to be below 1 second for everyone. So I'm below 1 second for everyone. So 15 is easy for not 15, but 5 users. It's easy for my setup.
How do you come with that one user is 6 concurrent?
There's a maximum number of simultaneous requests that a browser can send to the server, and that is 6.
Yes, but
Yeah.
the browser will send a lot of JavaScript files and other stuff. You are actually visiting the Drupal. So,
Yeah.
I think that would actually be way more.
But it's 6 at the same time. So there will be like a first one, then you have your answer, you have your HTML, and then there's a 6 sent at the same time,
Right.
and then the one of the 6 will be answered faster than the others,
Right.
and start another one,
What I'm
another
saying
one.
is-
So you will have 6 for like the time of the load of everything, between 1 and 4 seconds usually, and then it's going to be 3 to 1 0.
Yes, but the concurrent,
Yeah.
the requests afterwards will all be CSS file, JavaScript files, and they
Yeah.
will not be handled by Drupal. And you're testing now 6 times at a time for actually the start page.
Yeah, that's only yeah.
I'm just saying this. We test that. We're saying this is like, and what we usually say is one user makes one request per like every 4 or 5 seconds. So
Okay.
for me, that's like 200 or 300 people at the same time. What you're testing right now.
This
Because-
one is 30, but yeah, okay.
Yes, but the user doesn't like. He doesn't like.
No.
But that's what you're testing right now. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
even better than what you're saying.
Yeah. But it's 30 users, one after the other, because one is reading and
No, it's concurrent.
There's
It is concurrent. It's 30 people at the same time.
Yeah,
Clicking.
yeah, you can say it like that.
Yeah.
So it's like somebody who has a website, there's nobody, and then there's 1,000 people coming at the same time.
Yeah.
What you're saying? So he can handle, he is testing 1,000 people at the same time, coming to the
Not only
website.
that,
Is
what he's
correct?
saying is that it's faster than
Yeah. So I
display.
if I look at real data of our hosting stuff, if you test for that, you're testing around 5 times more. So
Yes,
if you put 30 in there, that's roughly around 150 to 200 users that
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
will create that traffic that you're simulating.
Exactly,
So
that's
it's
what-
way better than 5.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's even more better.
Yeah, and you can even tell a range because it depends on your application and a lot of, yeah, exactly. So that's the test with the PPM. We would like to see with the Apache one.
Okay, so what you're saying basically is we should be saying, wow, on screen.
And that's crazy. Well, there's. So maybe one question while you're on that. Have you tested it with actually visiting other nodes? Because we tested that as well.
Yeah.
And the problem is Drupal uses heavy static caching.
Yeah.
So the static cache of the Drupal will fill up very, very, very fast. Because every node, every block, every entity
Mhm.
will go into that static cache. So if you test it on one side, it's awesome. But if you have like if you're actually trying to run it on like, let's say a Drupal site with 5,000 nodes, the static cache at one point will have 5,000 nodes in there and your memory will die
Okay. Yeah.
multiple times.
So that's another problem that this doesn't
Okay.
address. Yeah.
And that's the part that now, like what you're doing with the restarting every 100,000 times,
Yeah.
that can solve it a bit.
Yeah.
But we realized that we need servers with like 10 times more memory than
There's a lot of stuff to
Yes.
to think about when you do optimization. So that's one like pinpointed.
But yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
freaking awesome. Like if you want to create that
Okay.
with PHP, there's no way right now to create that except with like a varnish or something like that. But then you have all the same content. And stuff, so.
So if we want to compare the results, that's 30 concurrent users with Apache. So it's between 36 and 74. We forget this one. Okay. it was between 15 and 26 with 30 users. So I have one with 300 users with PPM, so I will try with Apache also. And with Apache, it's taking a lot more load. The load average with Apache goes up to 40 something, and with PPM it goes to 2 or 3. And I think that we could, that's a very good news. And the bad news, is that there's a clog, there's a bottleneck somewhere. I think it's the PPM itself, because it cannot send to the workers enough requests to eat. So we don't have the solution we want. So and that's a good news because there's room to grow. Yes.
So using PPM, it allows you to use a cheaper infrastructure than using Apache and the regular stuff.
For this particular problem, you said about something else. If you have a big website with a lot of pages and how do you call static cache?
Yes, I'm sure.
Yeah. So for that particular problem, yes, you can do it. I saw someone doing tests with Raspberry Pi, very small machines. So if we compare, so we have between 283 and more than 1,000, so 1.4 seconds for 300. I have it. I think it's here. Yeah. Between 210 and 343. And so that's acceptable. How many? Oops. 360, okay. Oh, that's 360. Okay, so with 360, we had between 210 and 344. So I will do 360, I did 300 here. Yep. 210 and 344. To take 20 seconds. So the load would go to 40 something. Look at the load average there. Already 30. And if I put more than 30 seconds, it's going to go to 100 or something. The CPU is like completely munched. So we had between 242 and 343. We have between 306 and 1700. And that's not acceptable. So we have a better performance. It's not 1,000 times, but there's room to grow. So for me, it's a very interesting research domain. We have to look at the PPM now to make sure it doesn't go to 100% CPU and can send the request to the workers. Because now it's not doing that because it is blocked by the CPU. Do you have other questions?
So how far are you from actually, how much work do you think is required to take this to the next step, kind of finding applications where you can install something like this and make it work?
It needs to have someone dedicated to do it, putting the resources to do that. That's my personal time I invested in here. If someone wants to hire me to do that, I would happily, because for me, optimization is like very interesting.
Is there a community of people who are doing like you and scratching this and saying, maybe this could work?
Yes, there's already a community. That's where I took my information from. Yeah. I've seen it's like 4 years now that people are working on that.
can you apply this to any other CMS? Or just,
Yeah.
So it's a file that you, my first question was, is it a file that you upload on the server to make this happen, or
Yeah.
you just activate the,
You install the software with Composer,
okay,
and you need to have a bridge between a PPM and the CMS.
okay.
Now there's one for Laravel, for Symfony, Drupal, and maybe others.
So you download that bridge and you put it on the server.
You download or you create it because it's not there yet.
But your hosting company needs to support that. Your regular Drupal hosting will not be able to run that.
Exactly, that's what I'm
It's
saying.
not possible.
I use other CMS too, so it's like if you can improve, like just by using this recipe, you can optimize PHP site, right? Whatever you're using, like like Symfony or whatever, WordPress or
Yeah, it could be an option for people like Acquia or Pantheon to offer that kind of optimization.
yeah.
But yeah, but you cannot put that on any hosting company, it will not work, because most hosting companies use PHP-PM, and PHP-PM in itself is already doing stuff like that. So it's not possible, you cannot upload that to an Acquia hosting, and it will work. It's not gonna...
Yeah, the port 80 is already taken.
For example, yes.
Okay, but
So then your hosting company needs to support that. So the hosting companies need to make something different. It's like now everybody starts to do node hosting.
yeah.
It's pretty much very similar.
Or you have to, or you need to have more control on the software
Yes.
that's running on
Yeah,
the
so
server.
you need to have your own server to do that.
Yeah, that's better.
Or you work with a hosting company, they can do that.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's not to me. So we have that running. We have that running for Symfony. Symfony has support for it out of the box, and it's super fast. It's really cool. But with Drupal, we run into that problem of so the memory usage is way too crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy because if you have like 1,000, it's like having YouTube. Nobody knows YouTube, and the day after there's 1,000 people watching this. And it's like, okay, let's optimize this. So it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a good.
So is there a bridge for Drupal 7 or is it in general? Because Drupal 7 is not composed.
I think for me it's the same thing. I didn't try Drupal 7. I think it works on Drupal 7.
What do you mean by a bridge?
Oh, no, it's not using the same Symfony.
Symfony.
Probably not. Yeah.
So following the question, what do you mean by what's needed to be in that bridge? Like all the entity queries and everything, or just the way to work and call Drupal Bootstrap? Now you see what you want to have in that bridge.
Yeah. I didn't look at the bridge. Suppose it's what could it be there?
Another question is maybe for all the Drupal people in the room, like if just having the library right now it's working, and I saw that you can start an app, you show us you can write something and you start something, so can we basically use the library in controller and in every query we already have? Like we want the
There are some patches you need to install. So if you look for that, you will find it very fast. And for myself, I had to do a little tweak in one of the, I think it's PPM libraries, because it was adding a dot before all the resources, a dot slash instead of slash, like for example slash site slash default slash file slash, it was adding a dot. So when I go under a directory or slash something on the URL, it was not going to the good place. But I saw after that was maybe a parameter I didn't pass correctly. So, but I didn't try it. But I had to do some little tweaks, and now it's working fine.
So right now, if we have like every something really heavy that kills, like Drupal is really slow, I don't know, we're killing the memory or something like that.
Yeah.
Like for instance, I have a use case, I'm using the state API and a lot of things in cache. What if I can make this parallel? If I understand, I can make all the requests parallel and it's going to be really fast, and I won't have to use the heavy Drupal logic.
It depends on many parameters, but you may try it. Yeah.
So I guess my question is, what type of use case, like for instance, what do you see? I have a Drupal website, I have some heavy stuff, I want to to be faster?
I'd say basically the use case is the blocking I/O is your problem.
Okay.
You have the CPU and you have a lot of I/Os, and that's where you spend your time waiting for the I/O to complete. That's what PPM does, and no, I'd say no. I think it's the Bootstrap. Yeah, it removes the Bootstrap time. Yeah. So, but there may be other problems that if you resolve that, you're gonna have more problems on the other side. So it's a balance of many things.
So that this is going to make sure that we actually run PHP stuff.
Yeah.
This is going to take over how we do it right now. And it's probably going to take a couple of years because there's a lot of stuff to figure out. But
And there's another utility. It's coming from China. I don't remember the name. It's compiled in C, and it's doing PHP, and it looks a lot more faster than PHP-PM. But it doesn't have the kernel. It's not there yet. It's the bridge is not. There's no bridge. But it's doing almost the same thing as PHP-PM. I don't remember the name. I can find it if you want to know it. I saw the benchmarks, and it's like so fast. Yes, 100 times faster than PHP-PM, but there's no bridge. There's nothing.
Does it depend on a particular version of PHP? PHP 7, PHP 5?
It's working with PHP 5.6 and I think 5.5 and more, and for this test it's 7.2.
On some of your commands that you were executing, I saw stuff that
You want to say in
there was
French?
a CSV file that was receiving.
Yeah, generated by the ABS.
What's in that CSV file?
Instead of having 50% to 100% with those steps, it's the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 100. So there's a lot more than this. Yeah, and you can even generate one for doing plot with the GNU plot. It's -G in the name of a file, and you can use a GNU plot file to generate a diagram. It's really interesting to see it. Yeah. So that's it. Yeah.
You said you used Composer to install
Yeah.
your library. Where is it coming from? Is it PHP PM Drupal on GitHub?
PHP-PM, there's PHP-React, and I think those are the two that I had to install. The kernel also, HTTP kernel. Yeah. And I will give the links, more links. I have some links in there. I will complete my presentation with more links. I will publish it somewhere. I don't know. There's a place on the Drupal camp website for that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If it's possible, I will do that. Thanks a lot.
See you.